We don't make mistakes, just happy little accidents. Finder Wyvernspur is the god of transformation, of cycles of life, and of art. He is known as the Nameless Bard, and somewhat deservedly, as the god of reckless fools. His portfolio is to challenge and to tear down traditions and thereby, through art, to erode the static order and to facilitate new growth, rebirth, and renewal. He appears in roughly the same form as he did in mortal life, as an attractive, strong, and dark or grey-haired human bard in his early 60s. Sometimes younger, or sometimes older. He might also appear as a bright, guiding beacon, leading the lost to safety, or as a nimbus of light, visible only to one person, that leads them to the object of their heart's desire. He has a reputation not undeserved for recklessness and for ego, such that the term Finder's Pride is known throughout Faerun to mean one who thinks far too highly of themselves. But equally, his story is one of personal growth, of turning tragedies and personal failures into opportunities for growth, for reconciliation, and for the burgeoning of self-awareness. He leads by example in transforming himself through his understanding of life, through his relationship with art. The mortal Finder Wyvernspur was born some 500 years ago to the Cormyrean noble family of the Wyvernspurs. He became an accomplished bard and a swashbuckling rogue, before making history as a founding member of the Harpers, an organization dedicated to defending civilization and to opposing tyranny throughout the world. But the Nameless Bard's fame and prestige merely fed into his obsession with the purity of music. Abhorring any derivations or imitations of his pure compositions, he began to experiment with magical means to preserve his art unchanging for all of eternity. But he found that mere magical recordings fell flat, lacking the articulation of emotion that is necessary to convey true beauty. So he went further, creating an identical clone of himself and filling it with his own memories and music. But the clone was young, it was inexperienced and immature. So in frustration that it could not encapsulate his vision for the art that was born of his soul, the mortal Wyvernspur became abusive to his creation, until, in retaliation, it attempted to destroy him with a ring of disintegration. One of Finder's apprentices was killed in the attack, and another took their own life in guilt for their own role in the tragedies unfolding. For his crimes, born of obsession and arrogance, the Wyvernspur Bard was sentenced by the Harper Council to exile in a demi-plane known as the Citadel of White Exile, and all memory of his music was erased from the world. Centuries later, the Nameless Bard was freed from his cell for a chance at redemption, to save the world from Moanda, the god of rot, of corruption and decay. The powerful bard defeated and slew the elder god, absorbing its power. Taking the portfolio of rot, he redefined it from an evocation of crawling fear to a cyclical paradigm where the old ways must erode and one day be consigned to oblivion, to make room in turn for new life and fresh possibilities to flourish. As a new god, he is still very much finding his way in the world, and the weight of his sins bear heavy on his name. But by encouraging his followers to replicate and to transform existing pieces of art, it seems that, at last, he is beginning to understand the folly of his puritanical ways. Likewise, he encourages and inspires others on their journeys of self-discovery. The messengers of his will are birds, some of whom possess the ability to speak, and fairy dragons, and he will show favor to a follower with a gift of berylonite, a glossy gem which is colloquially known as Laeral's Tears. Finder Wyvernspur is tolerated by most good deities, but his closest ally is Timora, the goddess of luck, who sponsored his ascension and whom the nameless bard worshipped in life. He is also allied with Selune, the moon, and he keeps good relations with Malil, the god of music, though the younger god is prone to question the elder's more traditional attitudes towards art. He has powerful allies in the form of Ogma, the Lord of Knowledge, and Lathander, the Morning Lord, though their support arrives in an unofficial capacity, as their more traditional churches distance themselves from the upstart bard. However, being one who upsets the status quo, the young god has enemies aplenty. The Spider Queen Loth lays claim to Moanda's legacy, and the nameless bard alone stands in her way. Likewise, Gargoth, the god of corruption, Talona, the goddess of disease, and Yurtrus, the orcish death god, all desire the portfolio of rot, and see Wyvernspur's use of it as a perversion of natural law. And finally, for the nameless bard's patronage and protection of the anthropomorphic dinosaur races known as Saurials, the reptilian deities of Sebek, Set, and Tiamat all despise him. As befitting a wandering soul, Finder Wyvernspur makes his home across multiple realms. He has established for himself the realm of Fermata within Olympus on the first layer of the plane of Arborea. But his music is also to be found in Selune's palace within the gates of the moon, and his followers may find themselves in either realm come the afterlife. The nameless bard is a demigod, while his chaotic neutral alignment represents his unyielding drive towards freedom. Though little by little, he does seem to creep towards a chaotic good alignment. His clerics tend to adopt the light, life, and the Twilight domains, though he does encourage them to experiment with other domains as well. Though he does draw the line at transgressing the boundaries of undeath, and thus he grants his clerics the power to turn and to destroy undead. His chosen weapon is known as the Sword of Songs, and his divine casters all train in the longsword as a beautiful and a versatile weapon, while his holy time is in the morning, and his followers pray for spells with a song at dawn, as the night is transformed into the day. The followers of Wyvernspur are known as Finderites, and they celebrate the anniversary of his slaying Moanda as their holiest day on the 20th of Marpanoth as the autumn leaves fall. It is a festival punctuated by artistic expression of all kinds, and in particular the performance of the nameless bard's lost music. For although they were erased from memory, certain melodies have been rediscovered, such as the Armed Man, which is a difficult piece that is said to unravel the mind of one who does not take care in its performance, or Standing Stone, which is an ancient elven melody transformed by operatic lyrics penned by the god himself, or Tears of Selune, which is a hauntingly sad melody telling of the moon's betrayal by a demon who posed as her lover. His priests are known as Finders, and many of whom multi-class as bards. They make a living teaching music and encouraging artistic expression all across the realms. The priesthood have no formal dress, but they tend to favour greens and browns in imitation of the foresters of their god's homeland of Cormia. The Church of Finder Wyvernspur is still tiny, and it does not rank among the major faiths in any great kingdoms. However, within the Dale lands, there is a forgotten land known as Tarkledale, or the Lost Vale, where the Saurials worship the nameless bard to whom they owe their freedom. Whilst among humans, his worship is most likely to be found across the Western Heartlands. He has no great temples, except perhaps the Singing Cave in Tarkledale, a sacred place for music and the storage of donated art among the Saurials. But his shrines appear wherever there are performance halls with sound acoustics, and with space enough for dramatic and ambitious church services. The most famous of which are within the Plinth in Waterdeep, a great tower dedicated to the worship of all faiths equally, and within Timora's temple, known as the Hall of Luck, within Raven's Bluff. In my world, the noble line of the Wyvernspur family within the Western Heartlands has dwindled away to a single castle at the northern edge of the backwater lands known as the Sunset Vale, wherein the childless Lord Wyvernspur adopted 4 noble orphans and raised them by his own heretical beliefs, teaching that the stars in the sky are the many gods spread across the cosmos, and the 7 main constellations form the greater figures of what the gods combined may become as greater than themselves. For his heresy, the Lord Wyvernspur was put to death by a besieging army of mercenaries who left his castle abandoned while the orphans escaped into the reaching woods. When they came of age, the Wyvernspur orphans reached up and out to the stars, and they awoke 7 divine beings known as Suras, like gods, but not gods, mysterious spirits of magic, of the earth and of the air, whose broad portfolios seem to overlap with and to encompass the domains of the old gods of Faerun. They presented this new pantheon as a simplified alternative to the 144 gods of the old ways. Using the magic bestowed by these guardians, the Wyvernspur orphans, they came to rule and to enrich the 4 mighty cities of the Sunset Vale, each ascending to become a prince or a princess. And they founded the heretical faith of the 7 divines, that challenges the ancient institutions of the Faerunian pantheons. And thus they set in motion the culture wars, the tensions, and the major anxieties that define the political landscape of my world. Meanwhile, the lonely, abandoned castle Wyvernspur, their childhood home, they fortified as a neutral territory under no political sway, kept as a temple fortress to find a Wyvernspur himself, as a place for artists to seek inspiration, or as a safe haven for adventurers in their own journeys of self-discovery. It would seem that the orphan inheritors of the nameless bard's bloodline have well earned the name of Wyvernspur by starting a new cycle upon the backs of the old religions, as they in turn grow brittle and grey, as well as transforming the very notion of what it means to be a god. The teachings of the Finderite faith are as follows. Art that is immutable and unchanging is a symptom of the soul's stagnation and rot. Those who are open to change and to transformation may thrive and be renewed by their art. Art is political, and it speaks to power. And while this is not its sole use, it must be levied thusly, to oppose tyranny and to secure freedom. Artistic expression should be encouraged among all, young and old, skilled and unskilled. And finally, one should not merely praise the famous and the learned masters of artistic disciplines, but also one should recognize the importance of raw, fresh, and natural talents that are found among beginners.